There are moments when a single word carries more weight than years of effort. Moments when something ancient reaches the present, not through noise or spectacle, but through quiet recognition. Write this word Baruch on paper and place it here. Attracts financial abundance in 48 hours. At first glance, it sounds almost too simple. And yet, simplicity has always been the preferred language of true wisdom. In the ancient Hebrew worldview, nothing powerful announces itself loudly. The deepest forces move silently, patiently, waiting for the right vessel, the right posture, the right moment. When wisdom arrives without preparation, it is misunderstood. When it arrives with readiness, it transforms. If you are hearing this now, pause for a second and understand something important. In Jewish thought, there are no accidental encounters. There are only moments of alignment. This message did not appear in your life randomly. It appeared because something within you is ready to listen differently. Before we go any further, allow me to ask you for a simple but meaningful gesture. If content like this speaks to you, if ancient wisdom explained with clarity and responsibility matters to you, subscribe to the channel Jewish Wisdom. This is not about algorithms. It is about sustaining a space where these teachings can continue to exist and reach those who are searching quietly. Now, take part in this moment. Do not remain only an observer. Write this sentence in the comments. I am open to alignment. Do it calmly, without urgency. Participation creates presence. Most people approach money with tension, with fear, with constant calculation. They believe abundance is something to be hunted, negotiated, or conquered. But the ancient texts never describe blessing as something pursued aggressively. They describe it as something that arrives when order is restored. The problem is not lack of effort. The problem is misplacement. Many people are exhausted, not because they work too little, but because they stand in positions that drain them. They repeat cycles that block flow while asking for expansion. They pray for increase while resisting the inner order that allows increase to remain. The Hebrew scriptures do not glorify struggle for its own sake. They glorify wisdom, timing, and positioning. There is a difference between movement and alignment. Movement without alignment creates friction. Alignment creates momentum. This is why ancient wisdom moves slowly at first. It does not rush to instructions. It does not hand out formulas. It prepares the inner ground before any external act is introduced. Because when an action is performed without understanding, it becomes superstition, and superstition produces disappointment. The sages taught that words are not decorative sounds. Words are vessels. In Hebrew consciousness, a word carries direction, intention, and spiritual structure. When spoken, written, or held with awareness, it activates movement. When used carelessly, it loses coherence. That is why certain words were never treated lightly. They were spoken at specific moments, in specific contexts, with specific intention. Not to force reality, but to align with it. This message is not about forcing money to appear. It is about understanding why flow stops and how it resumes. Look honestly at your life right now. Where do things feel heavy? Where does effort seem disproportionate to results? Where do opportunities appear but fail to stay? In Jewish wisdom, stagnation is rarely random. It is often the result of subtle misalignment, not punishment, not lack of worth, but disconnection between intention and structure. This is why ancient teachings never separated spirituality from daily life. Finances, work, provision, responsibility, all of these were considered part of spiritual order. There was no division between sacred and practical. Order in one reflected order in the other. And this is where modern thinking often fails. People chase results without correcting structure. They seek blessing without preparing vessels. They desire increase without stability. The ancient texts warn gently but clearly. Increase without order leaks. Expansion without integrity collapses. That is why wisdom never begins with promises. It begins with preparation. The idea that something can shift within 48 hours is not about speed. It is about responsiveness. When resistance dissolves, movement accelerates naturally, not because of magic, but because obstacles are removed. Think of a locked door. The moment the key aligns correctly, the door opens instantly. Not because the door changed, but because alignment occurred. The modern mind asks, how fast will this work? Ancient wisdom asks, is the key aligned? This is why certain teachings were transmitted quietly, from generation to generation. Not hidden, but protected. Because without readiness, even truth becomes distortion. What you are hearing now is not a promise. It is an invitation. An invitation to slow down, to listen beneath the surface, to recognize that abundance is not attracted by desire alone, but by coherence. There is a reason why gratitude always precedes increase in the scriptures. There is a reason why blessing is spoken before multiplication. These are not poetic ideas. They are structural principles. But none of this can be rushed. If you are here only out of desperation, pause. Desperation narrows perception. If you are here with openness and responsibility, continue listening. The sages said that blessing avoids chaos. It seeks vessels that can contain it without distortion. This is why some people receive opportunities that overwhelm them, while others grow steadily with peace. The difference is not intelligence. It is alignment. This teaching is ancient. It is sober. It is grounded. And it requires patience. Nothing needs to be done yet. Nothing needs to be written yet. Nothing needs to be placed yet. For now, the only thing required is presence. Let the mind quiet. Let expectations soften. Let intentions settle. Because wisdom never rushes. And when the moment arrives, it does not announce itself. It reveals itself. And those who are ready will recognize it immediately. In the Hebrew tradition, revelation never arrives abruptly. It unfolds when the inner posture is ready to receive it. And now, slowly, respectfully, the meaning behind the word begins to emerge. Baruch is not a decorative word. It is not a poetic expression invented to sound sacred. It is one of the most ancient and structurally powerful words in the Hebrew language. It appears at the foundation of Scripture, at the lips of patriarchs, in prayers whispered daily for thousands of years, and in moments where alignment between heaven and earth is consciously acknowledged. The first time the essence of blessing is revealed in the Torah is not through wealth, gold, or possessions. It is through movement and positioning. In Genesis, when Abraham is called to leave what is familiar, the promise is not framed as accumulation, but as flow. I will bless you, and you shall be a blessing. This distinction is critical. The blessing is not static. It moves through a person who is aligned. The Hebrew root of Baruch is connected to the idea of drawing down and extending. It is not merely about receiving something. It is about becoming a conduit through which blessing can pass without obstruction. This is why, in Jewish thought, blessing is never separated from responsibility. What flows toward you must also be able to flow through you. Rabbinic teachings explain that Baruch is spoken when recognizing a source beyond the self. It is a declaration that says, without words, I am not the origin of what sustains me. This recognition creates humility, and humility creates stability. Stability is what allows increase to remain. In the Psalms, blessing is repeatedly linked to root. He shall be like a tree planted by streams of water. The image is precise. A tree does not chase water. It positions itself correctly. Once rooted, nourishment arrives consistently. This is the same spiritual geometry carried within the word Baruch. The sages taught that when a person acknowledges the source, the channel opens. When the channel opens, flow resumes. When flow resumes, what is needed arrives naturally, without force. This is why Baruch was never used as a demand. It was used as recognition. And recognition changes everything. In traditional Jewish prayer, Baruch is often the first word spoken, not because it flatters the divine, but because it aligns the speaker. It places the human being in the correct orientation before asking, receiving, or acting. Without this orientation, even good actions can produce distorted results. There is a teaching in the Midrash that explains that blessing does not rest where there is inner fragmentation. Where intention and action are disconnected, flow weakens. Baruch reunites intention and awareness. It restores coherence. This is also why the word is deeply connected to provision and sustenance. In ancient Israel, prosperity was never understood as excess for display. It was understood as sufficiency with peace. Enough to live, to give, to sustain family and community, without anxiety consuming the soul. The tonic never glorifies accumulation without purpose. It consistently warns against gain that lacks integrity. The reason is simple. What is gained without alignment cannot be sustained. It leaks, collapses, or becomes a source of fear. Baruch addresses this at the root. It is a word that stabilizes before it multiplies. There is another layer revealed in the Hebrew letters themselves. Hebrew is not merely phonetic, it is conceptual. Each letter carries meaning, direction, and movement. Together, they form not just words, but spiritual structures. Baruch carries the structure of expansion anchored in humility. It does not explode outward chaotically. It grows downward first, like roots, before expanding upward. This is why the sages emphasized the blessing descends, where there is space to receive it. Pride fills space with noise. Gratitude creates space through awareness. Baruch is an act of creating space. In Jewish households, blessings are spoken over food, over moments, over transitions, not to sanctify the object itself, but to align the person with the flow that sustains life. When alignment is consistent, provision becomes steady. This principle echoes forward into later theological understanding as well. Even in the New Testament, the idea remains intact. Gratitude precedes multiplication. Recognition precedes increase. What is acknowledged grows. When Jesus gives thanks before breaking bread, the structure is the same. Recognition first. Flow follows. The language changes, but the spiritual law remains unchanged. Baruch, then, is not confined to one tradition. It is a law embedded in reality itself, revealed through Hebrew consciousness. Now, the idea of writing the word is not superstition. In Jewish mysticism, writing is an act of embodiment. What is written is externalized intention. It moves from abstraction into form. But form without awareness is empty. This is why the placement matters, not as a magical location, but as a reminder of positioning. Where you place something reflects where you assign value. Awareness follows placement, and awareness directs flow. The concept of time, such as 48 hours, is also not arbitrary. In Hebrew thought, time is qualitative, not just quantitative. Certain intervals represent cycles of adjustment, not instant reward. They symbolize responsiveness rather than delay. When alignment is corrected, reality responds faster than the mind expects, not because of impatience, but because resistance has been removed. This is why people sometimes experience sudden shifts after long periods of stagnation. Nothing new was added. Something was realigned. The sages were clear. Blessing does not come to convince. It comes to confirm. When inner order is restored, outer reality follows. Baruch does not bypass effort. It organizes it. It does not replace action. It gives action direction. It does not promise wealth without responsibility. It stabilizes provision, so responsibility can be fulfilled without fear. This teaching has survived because it works, quietly, consistently, without spectacle. And now that you understand the structure, the meaning, and the depth behind this word, it becomes clear why it was never meant to be rushed, shouted, or reduced to formula. It is a key. But a key only works when held with understanding. And understanding, once received, changes the way everything else is approached. From this place, action begins to make sense. When ancient wisdom is revealed, it is never meant to remain abstract. Revelation that does not touch daily life becomes philosophy. Wisdom that does not move behavior becomes decoration. And the Hebrew tradition never treated truth as something to admire from a distance. It was always something to live. Now that the structure behind the word has been uncovered, the question naturally arises: how does this enter the rhythm of ordinary life? How does something ancient translate into modern pressure, bills, responsibilities, and uncertainty? The answer is simpler than most expect, and deeper than most imagine. Alignment does not begin with money. It begins with awareness. And awareness reshapes behavior, long before circumstances change. To apply this teaching, the first shift is internal. It is the decision to stop chasing outcomes and begin correcting posture. This does not mean passivity. It means intentionality. It means asking, before action, whether the action flows from fear or from clarity. Most financial stress is not caused by lack alone. It is caused by constant inner noise. Worry fractures focus. Anxiety scatters effort. When effort is scattered, results weaken. Baruch recenters the inner state, so effort regains coherence. This is why the sages emphasized daily alignment over dramatic rituals. Small, consistent awareness outperforms sporadic intensity. Begin by noticing how you approach provision. When you receive money, do you tense or relax? When you spend, do you feel guilt or clarity? When you plan, do you rush or consider? These reactions reveal alignment more than numbers ever will. To practice this teaching, slow the moment down. Before financial decisions, pause. Not to hesitate, but to orient. A pause is not delay, it is calibration. In Hebrew thought, a moment of awareness prevents weeks of correction. This is where writing becomes meaningful. Writing the word is not about forcing reality. It is about anchoring intention into form. It reminds the mind and body that provision flows through alignment, not panic. But the real work happens after the pen leaves the paper. Alignment requires honesty. It requires recognizing habits that block flow. overspending driven by emotion, undercharging driven by fear, avoiding responsibility while praying for increase. These contradictions quietly sabotage abundance. Baruch does not bless contradiction, it resolves it. When intention and behavior begin to agree, even imperfectly, resistance weakens, opportunities feel lighter, decisions become clearer, energy stabilizes. This is not mystical exaggeration. It is observable reality. Now, take part again. Write this sentence in the comments. I align my actions with wisdom. Do not write it mechanically. Write it as a commitment, because commitment is where practice begins. There is another practical layer that ancient wisdom emphasizes: generosity with boundaries. Giving without wisdom drains. Hoarding without trust suffocates. Balance sustains flow. The tradition never praised reckless generosity or fearful accumulation. It praised discernment. Applying this teaching means reviewing where money leaves your life unconsciously. Small leaks matter. Energy follows attention. When attention is restored, leaks close naturally. This is not about perfection. It is about coherence. As coherence grows, something subtle happens. You stop negotiating your worth internally. You stop undervaluing your time. You stop accepting arrangements that drain without return. These shifts often occur quietly, but their impact is profound. Now, let me speak to you directly for a moment. If you enjoy content like this, and you want to support us, so we can continue bringing more teachings like this, here below the video, there is a button labeled "Thank you." If you are able to contribute, we will be truly grateful. Your support allows this wisdom to keep flowing to those who need it. Support, in ancient understanding, is also alignment. Sustaining what nourishes you keeps the channel open. Returning to the practice, understand that results are not always dramatic. Often they are stabilizing. Less stress, fewer emergencies, better decisions, increased trust. These are signs that flow is resuming. And when flow resumes, material results follow in their proper time. The mistake many people make is watching the clock instead of watching alignment. They ask, "Has it worked yet?" instead of asking, "Am I acting differently?" Reality mirrors behavior faster than it mirrors desire. In Jewish wisdom, transformation is recognized by peace before prosperity, calm before expansion, clarity before multiplication. If your mind feels quieter, you are aligned. If your decisions feel cleaner, you are aligned. If effort feels less desperate, you are aligned. From this place, money becomes a tool instead of a threat, a servant instead of a master. Remember, this teaching never promised wealth without honesty. It promised flow without friction. And friction dissolves when integrity stabilizes. Every time you realign intention with action, you reinforce the channel. Every time you choose clarity over impulse, you strengthen the vessel. Every time you act without fear, you invite stability. This is not mystical fantasy. This is ancient realism. You are not meant to struggle endlessly. You are meant to grow wisely. And wisdom, when applied gently and consistently, reshapes life from the inside out. From here, emotion deepens. Understanding matures, and the teaching moves beyond words into lived experience. And lived experience is where true blessing settles. There is a moment in every person's journey when understanding stops being intellectual and becomes personal. A moment when wisdom no longer feels like information, but like a mirror. This is where ancient teachings stop sounding distant and begin to feel intimate. Imagine someone standing at the edge of their own life, not broken, not defeated, but tired in a way that rest alone cannot heal. They have done what they were taught to do, worked harder, tried again, adjusted strategies. Yet something invisible kept pressing against their progress, like walking against a current that never seems to stop. This person is not weak. They are misaligned. In Jewish wisdom, this moment is sacred. It is the moment before real change. The sages taught that when effort no longer produces peace, the soul is asking for reorientation, not more pressure. Many people confuse this moment with failure. In truth, it is an invitation. There is an old rabbinic story about a man who prayed daily for abundance. He prayed sincerely, with faith, asking for relief from financial stress. One day, after years of prayer, he felt an unusual stillness instead of urgency. He stopped asking and began listening. That day, nothing external changed. But internally, something shifted. He noticed how he made decisions from fear, how he undervalued his work, how he avoided responsibility while hoping for rescue. No miracle happened that day, but alignment began. Weeks later, Opportunities appeared that had always been there, but had been invisible to him. Not because heaven suddenly noticed him, but because his perception had changed. His posture had changed. He could finally receive what had been waiting. This is how transformation actually happens. Baruch is not a dramatic interruption of reality. It is a gentle correction of direction. And direction determines destination more than speed ever will. Emotionally, this matters because financial pressure is rarely just about money. It is about safety, dignity, worth, fear of the future. When these fears remain unspoken, they silently govern decisions. When they are acknowledged, they lose power. The ancient texts never shame fear. They guide it. They teach that fear narrows vessels, while trust expands them. But trust is not blind belief. It is practiced alignment. If you have ever felt that quiet anxiety when checking your account, that tightening in the chest before making decisions, that sense of always being behind, no matter how much you do understand this clearly, you are not alone, and you are not broken. You are standing at the threshold where wisdom replaces strain. This teaching invites you to bring compassion into your relationship with provision, to stop fighting money as an enemy, to stop idolizing it as a savior, to see it as a flow that responds to clarity and responsibility. Now, I want you to pause and reflect honestly, not on what you lack, but on what has been weighing on you emotionally around money. Where does fear speak louder than wisdom? Where does urgency override discernment? And if this message is touching something real inside you, write in the comments. From the heart, I am ready to release fear and choose alignment. This is not a public declaration. It is a private shift made visible. Emotion is not weakness in spiritual work. It is the gateway. The Psalms were never sanitized prayers. They were raw, honest conversations with the divine. Anger, doubt, hope, gratitude, all spoken without masks. Because authenticity creates space for transformation. And now, let faith meet action. Faith in ancient understanding was never passive. It was trust expressed through movement. Small movements, honest movements, sustainable movements. You do not need to change your life overnight. You need to change your orientation. From this place, begin to treat your work with respect, your time with dignity, your decisions with patience. These are not motivational ideas. They are spiritual practices. When you do this, something subtle but powerful occurs. You stop leaking energy. You stop negotiating your value internally. You stop apologizing for existing. And the world responds differently to someone who stands in quiet coherence. This is how abundance becomes natural, instead of stressful. And if you are resonating with this theme, if you want to deepen your understanding with clarity and responsibility, we have prepared a complimentary resource. There is an ebook called Jewish Wisdom Ebook, focused on abundant Jewish prosperity, where these principles are explained step by step, with context, grounding, and real-life application. If you wish to access it, the link is in the description of this video, or in the first pinned comment. It is there to support you, not to pressure you. Knowledge that transforms must be accessible, not overwhelming. As we draw this reflection inward, there is a truth that must be understood, not with the mind alone, but with the quiet awareness of the soul. Alignment is not an achievement. It is not a destination reached once and secured forever. Alignment is a return. A return you make again and again, gently, consciously, daily. And each time you return, something strengthens within you, not dramatically, not loudly, but steadily. In the ancient understanding, strength was never measured by intensity. It was measured by consistency. The river that shapes stone does not rush, it flows. And because it flows without resistance, it transforms everything it touches. You were never meant to live in constant tension. Tension is not a sign of virtue. It is a signal. A signal that something inside is being forced to move against its natural direction. When the soul is aligned, effort still exists. Responsibility still exists. Work still exists. But tension dissolves. Movement becomes cleaner. Decisions become lighter. The body breathes differently. You were never meant to survive endlessly. Survival mode narrows vision. It contracts possibility. It keeps the heart vigilant instead of receptive. Survival teaches the soul to brace, to defend, to expect loss. And a soul that is always bracing cannot receive fully, even when opportunity stands right in front of it. The ancient texts never praised survival. They praised life. They praised peace. They praised the state of being rooted, where provision does not arrive as a shock, but as a continuation. You were meant to stand where flow reaches you naturally. This does not mean a life without effort. It means a life without constant resistance. Resistance is what drains. Resistance is what exhausts. Resistance is what convinces people that abundance is rare and fragile. Flow, on the other hand, is stable. Flow is quiet. Flow is trustworthy. When you stand where flow reaches you, you stop negotiating your worth. You stop asking permission to exist. You stop apologizing for taking space. You move with a sense of inner legitimacy, and legitimacy changes how the world responds to you. Let this teaching settle slowly. Do not rush to do something with it. Do not turn it into another task. Wisdom does not demand urgency. It invites presence. Let emotion soften resistance. Emotion is not the enemy of clarity. Suppressed emotion is. When emotion is acknowledged, it loosens its grip. When fear is seen, it shrinks. When anxiety is named, it loses authority. Ancient prayer was never sterile. It was human. It allowed trembling hands. It allowed uncertainty. It allowed questions. Because authenticity opens channels that perfection never will. Let awareness guide action. Awareness is the bridge between intention and behavior. Without awareness, action becomes repetition. With awareness, even small actions reorient an entire life. Notice how you speak to yourself about money. Notice how you breathe when you think about the future. Notice where you tighten unnecessarily. These are not flaws. They are signals. And signals guide correction. Each time you choose awareness instead of panic, you realign. Each time you choose clarity instead of impulse, you realign. Each time you choose responsibility instead of avoidance, you realign. And each return strengthens the channel. The channel does not demand perfection. It responds to sincerity. It does not close because you stumble. It closes when you refuse to look. And it opens again the moment you return. This is why alignment is forgiving. It is patient. It waits. And now, let these words seal something within you. Not as a promise, but as a remembrance. When you choose alignment, blessing no longer needs to chase you. Chasing implies distance. It implies resistance. It implies struggle. Recognition is different. Recognition means you are already standing where flow can see you. And when flow recognizes you, it does not arrive with noise. It arrives with peace. It arrives as stability instead of chaos, as clarity instead of confusion, as enough instead of anxiety. This is the blessing the ancients spoke of. Not excess without meaning, but provision with dignity. Not abundance that corrupts, but abundance that supports life. Carry this understanding gently. Let it influence how you move, how you decide, how you wait. You do not need to force what is meant to flow. You do not need to beg what recognizes alignment. You do not need to chase what responds to coherence. Stand where flow reaches you naturally, and return there daily. That is how the channel remains open. What remains now is not another concept, not another explanation, but a settling, a quiet integration. Because true wisdom does not end with emotion or understanding alone. It completes its work when it reshapes how a person walks back into ordinary life. The ancient teachers never rushed closure. They understood that revelation needs space to land. When something meaningful is received, it should not be crowded by excess words. It should be allowed to breathe. You have not been listening to ideas. You have been exposed to a pattern that existed long before modern systems, before financial anxiety became normal, before survival replaced trust. This pattern has remained intact because it is woven into reality itself. Alignment is not a spiritual trend. It is a law of coherence. When the inner world and the outer world agree, friction dissolves. When intention and action stop arguing, energy consolidates. When fear no longer dominates decision-making, intelligence rises naturally to the surface. This is why the sages taught that blessing does not arrive suddenly to transform a life. It arrives quietly to reorganize it. And once reorganization begins, results follow as consequence, not as reward. From this point forward, the invitation is simple, but it is not superficial. Return to alignment daily, not as a ritual, as a posture. When you wake up, notice your first thought about provision. Is it tension or trust? When you plan your day, notice whether urgency or clarity leads. When you make decisions, notice whether fear or wisdom is speaking louder. These observations are not judgments. They are compass points. The more often you notice, the less often you drift. This is how ancient wisdom was lived. Not through dramatic moments, but through consistent awareness. The people who embodied blessing were not those who never struggled, but those who corrected course quickly and gently. Correction is not failure. Refusal to correct is. And this is where maturity begins. Financial peace is not built by sudden gains alone. It is built by stability of mind. Stability allows discernment. Discernment allows better choices. Better choices compound quietly over time. This is why impatience is the enemy of abundance. Not because waiting is virtuous, but because impatience distorts perception. It pushes action before alignment is restored. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not missing something essential. You are learning to stand correctly. When you stand correctly, effort becomes efficient. Work becomes meaningful. Money becomes functional instead of emotional. And life feels less like a battle and more like a rhythm. This does not remove challenges. It changes how you meet them. Instead of reacting, you respond. Instead of forcing, you adjust. Instead of chasing, you recognize openings. This is the difference between surviving and living wisely. And now, as this message comes to rest, understand this clearly. No video, no message, no single teaching can complete this work alone. Wisdom was never meant to be consumed quickly and forgotten. It was meant to be revisited, studied, and applied gradually. That is why, for those who feel drawn to continue this path with depth and responsibility, there is a resource prepared to support you. We have an ebook called Prosperity Judea, where these principles are explored in a structured, grounded, and practical way, based on Jewish wisdom and ancient teachings. If you wish to access it, the link is available in the description of this video. It exists to help you continue the learning beyond this moment, at your own pace, with clarity. Learning that transforms is never rushed. If something in this message resonated with you, let it influence your next small decision. Not tomorrow, not someday, today. Small alignment, practiced consistently, reshapes entire outcomes. And as you move forward, carry this final remembrance with you, not as a slogan, but as an orientation. You are not meant to exhaust yourself proving your worth. You are not meant to live in constant correction. You are meant to cooperate with a flow that sustains life. Alignment is not passive. It is intelligent participation. Each time you return to it, you strengthen the channel. Each time you choose awareness, you stabilize the vessel. Each time you act without fear, you invite peace. And peace is the soil where abundance grows without corruption. Let this understanding walk with you quietly. Let it inform how you earn, how you give, how you plan, how you rest. This is how wisdom becomes embodied. When alignment is chosen, blessing does not need to be summoned. It recognizes you. And recognition is the beginning of a different way of living.